Dog barks at owner's coffin at funeral. What they discover next will leave you horrified. George Turner was a man who embodied the spirit of small-town America. He lived his life with a quiet dignity, his days filled with the simple pleasures of family, friends, and community. His home, a quaint two-story house with a wraparound porch and a sprawling garden, was a haven of warmth and hospitality, a place where laughter and conversation flowed freely. George had always been a pillar of his community. He was a deacon at the local church, his deep faith guiding his every action. He volunteered tirelessly at the animal shelter, his love for animals evident in the gentle way he handled even the most timid creatures. He was a fixture at town meetings, his voice always advocating for the betterment of his community. And he was a beloved neighbor, always ready with a helping hand, a warm meal, or a sympathetic ear. His wife, Martha, was his anchor, his confidant, his partner in life's journey. They had met in high school, their love blossoming amidst Friday night football games and soda shop dates. Their marriage was a testament to their enduring love, a bond that had weathered the storms of life with unwavering strength. Their 2 children, Michael and Sarah, were the pride and joy of their lives. Michael, the elder, had inherited his father's quiet strength and his mother's compassionate heart. He had become a successful architect, his designs gracing the skylines of several major cities. Sarah, the younger, was a free spirit, her artistic soul finding expression in her vibrant paintings and sculptures. She had chosen to stay close to home, her studio nestled amidst the rolling hills of their small town. 10 years ago, George's life had been enriched by the arrival of Buddy, a golden retriever puppy with soulful brown eyes and an infectious enthusiasm for life. Buddy had been found abandoned on the side of the road, a tiny, shivering ball of fur. George, unable to resist his pleading eyes, had brought him home, and the two had been inseparable ever since. Buddy was more than just a pet. He was George's confidant, his shadow, his furry soulmate. They would spend hours together, walking in the woods, playing fetch in the park, or simply relaxing on the porch, Buddy's head resting on George's lap. Buddy's presence brought a renewed sense of joy to George's life, a reminder of the simple pleasures that life had to offer. One crisp autumn morning, the tranquility of the Turner household was shattered. Martha awoke to find George lying still beside her, his face pale, his breathing shallow. Panic gripped her heart as she realized he wasn't responding. She called 911, her voice trembling, her words barely coherent. The paramedics arrived, their sirens wailing, their lights flashing, but it was too late. George had passed away peacefully in his sleep, his heart giving out after a lifetime of faithful service. The news of his death spread through the community like a shockwave, leaving a void that could never be filled. Martha was devastated, her world crumbling around her. Michael and Sarah rushed home, their hearts heavy with grief. The community rallied around them, offering comfort and support, but the pain of their loss was overwhelming. Buddy, sensing the shift in atmosphere, became withdrawn and subdued. He would wander aimlessly around the house, his tail drooping, his eyes filled with sadness. He would often sit by George's favorite armchair, his head resting on the cushion, as if waiting for his beloved companion to return. The funeral was held at the local church, the sanctuary overflowing with mourners. The air was thick with grief, the silence punctuated by sobs and sniffles. George's coffin, draped with a white cloth, rested at the front of the church, a stark reminder of their loss. Buddy, on a leash held by Michael, lay quietly at Martha's feet. He seemed to understand the solemnity of the occasion, his usually playful demeanor replaced by a quiet sadness. As the service progressed, the pastor's words echoing through the sanctuary, Buddy remained still, his eyes fixed on the coffin. But as the pallbearers approached the coffin, preparing to carry it out of the church, Buddy became agitated. He whined softly, his body trembling, his gaze fixed on the coffin. Martha, lost in her grief, barely noticed his distress. Suddenly, as the coffin was being carried down the aisle, Buddy let out a sharp bark, a a sound that pierced the silence of the somber gathering. Everyone turned to look at him, their faces etched with surprise and confusion. Buddy continued to bark, his gaze fixed on the coffin, his body tense.
Buddy, no.
Martha said softly, reaching down to pet him. It's all right, boy. Daddy's gone to sleep. But Buddy wouldn't be consoled. He continued to bark, his barks becoming more insistent, more frantic. The mourners exchanged uneasy glances, their whispers growing louder. What's wrong with him? He's never barked like that before. Maybe he senses something. Martha, her heart aching, tried to calm Buddy, but he wouldn't be swayed. He strained against his leash, his eyes fixed on the coffin, his barks echoing through the church, a jarring counterpoint to the mournful hymns. The unsettling scene left a lingering sense of unease, a question mark hanging in the air. What had Buddy sensed? What had caused his sudden outburst? No one had an answer, but the seed of doubt had been planted, a seed that would soon grow into a terrifying revelation. The pastor, a kind and gentle man with a calming presence, paused his eulogy, his eyes filled with concern as he looked at the distressed dog and the grieving family. He gently placed a hand on Martha's shoulder, offering a silent reassurance. "It's all right, Martha," he said softly. "Buddy is just grieving in his own way. He misses George as much as we all do." Martha nodded, tears streaming down her face. She reached down and stroked Buddy's fur, her touch gentle and loving. "It's okay, Buddy," she whispered. "Daddy's in a better place now." But Buddy remained agitated, his barks echoing through the church, a jarring counterpoint to the somber hymns. The mourners shifted uncomfortably in their seats, their whispers growing louder. Some looked at Buddy with pity, others with apprehension. A few even cast suspicious glances towards the coffin, their minds conjuring up unsettling possibilities. Michael, sensing the growing unease, tightened his grip on Buddy's leash. "Come on, boy," he said firmly. "Let's go outside for a bit." He led Buddy out of the church, the dog reluctantly following, his barks gradually subsiding into whimpers. Outside, in the crisp autumn air, Michael knelt beside Buddy, his hand resting on the dog's head. "It's okay, Buddy," he said soothingly. "I know you miss Dad. We all do, but he wouldn't want you to be upset." Buddy leaned into Michael's touch, his whimpers softening. He licked Michael's hand, his eyes filled with a deep sadness that mirrored the grief in Michael's own heart. After a few minutes, they returned to the church, Buddy now calmer, his barks replaced by an occasional whimper. The service resumed, the pastor's words flowing over the mourners like a balm, offering solace and hope. But the memory of Buddy's outburst lingered, a shadow cast over the otherwise peaceful farewell. As the funeral procession made its way to the cemetery, Buddy walked alongside the hearse, his head held high, his gait steady. He seemed to be guarding his beloved master, escorting him to his final resting place. At the graveside, as the coffin was lowered into the ground, Buddy let out a low whine, a mournful sound that echoed the sorrow in the hearts of those gathered. After the burial, the mourners gathered at the Turner home, sharing stories and memories of George, their laughter and tears mingling in a bittersweet tribute to the man they had lost. Buddy, now released from his leash, wandered among the guests, accepting their pats and condolences with a quiet dignity. But as the day drew to a close and the guests departed, Buddy's demeanor changed. He became restless, pacing back and forth, his whimpers growing louder. He refused to leave George's study, the room where George had spent countless hours reading, writing, and enjoying his quiet time. Martha, exhausted from grief and the day's events, tried to coax Buddy out of the study, but he wouldn't budge. He lay down by George's armchair, his head resting on the cushion, his eyes fixed on the door, as if guarding his master's sanctuary. "He's just missing George," Sarah said to her mother, her voice filled with sympathy. "He'll come around eventually." Martha nodded, but a nagging worry settled in her heart. Buddy's behavior was unusual, even for a grieving dog. There was something in his eyes, a deep unease that she couldn't quite explain. As the days turned into weeks, Buddy's behavior didn't improve. He continued to spend most of his time in George's study, refusing to go for walks, barely touching his food. He would often stand by the window, gazing out at the street, his ears perked, his body tense, as if waiting for something or someone. His nighttime behavior was even more unsettling. He would pace restlessly around the house, his whimpers echoing through the empty rooms. He would often stand by Martha's bedroom door, whining softly, as if trying to warn her of some unseen danger. Martha, her concern growing, tried to seek help from the local veterinarian. The vet, a kind and experienced woman, examined Buddy thoroughly, but found nothing physically wrong with him. "He's grieving," she explained to Martha. "It's not uncommon for dogs to exhibit unusual behavior after the loss of a loved one. Give him time, Martha. He'll heal." Martha nodded, but her doubts lingered. Buddy's behavior was more than just grief. There was something else, something deeper, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. A sense of foreboding settled over her, a feeling that something was terribly wrong. The weeks following the funeral were a blur of grief and adjustment for the Turner family. Martha moved through her days in a haze of sorrow, her once vibrant spirit dimmed by the loss of her beloved husband. Michael and Sarah, despite their own grief, tried to be strong for their mother, taking turns staying at the house, helping with chores, and offering comfort and support. But amidst the shared grief, a growing unease settled over them. Buddy's behavior continued to be erratic, his once playful and affectionate nature replaced by a constant state of anxiety and vigilance. He remained fixated on George's study, refusing to leave the room for more than a few minutes at a time. He would lie by George's armchair, his head resting on the cushion, his eyes fixed on the door, as if guarding a sacred space. At night, his restlessness intensified. He would pace the hallways, his claws clicking on the hardwood floor, his whimpers echoing through the silent house. He would often stand by Martha's bedroom door, whining softly, as if trying to warn her of some unseen danger. Martha, her sleep already troubled by nightmares and grief-stricken awakenings, found herself dreading the night, the darkness amplifying her anxieties and Buddy's unsettling behavior. One evening, as Sarah was preparing dinner, she noticed Buddy staring intently at the back door, his body rigid, his ears perked. He let out a low growl, a sound she had never heard him make before. Sarah, her heart pounding, cautiously approached the door, peering out into the darkness. She saw nothing but the familiar shadows of the trees swaying in the wind. "What is it, Buddy?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What do you see?" Buddy continued to growl, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond the door. Sarah, her unease growing, reached for the phone, her fingers dialing 911 before she could even think. She hung up before the operator answered, her rational mind telling her she was overreacting. But the fear in Buddy's eyes, the primal instinct that seemed to be guiding him, sent shivers down her spine. The next day, Sarah decided to confide in her brother. Michael, a pragmatist by nature, initially dismissed her concerns. "He's just grieving, Sarah," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "It's not unusual for dogs to act strangely after the loss of a loved one. He'll come around eventually." But Sarah wasn't convinced. "It's more than that, Michael," she insisted. "There's something else going on. He's not just sad, he's scared. He's acting like he's trying to protect us from something." Michael, seeing the genuine fear in his sister's eyes, softened his stance. "Okay," he said. "I'll keep an eye on him. Maybe we should install some security cameras just to be safe." That night, as Michael lay in bed, listening to the sounds of Buddy pacing the hallway, a thought struck him. What if Buddy wasn't just grieving? What if he was reacting to something specific, something related to George's death? The thought, once planted, took root in his mind, growing into a full-blown suspicion. The next morning, Michael began his own investigation. He started by reviewing the police report on George's death. The report stated that George had died of a heart attack in his sleep, a natural cause of death. But something about the report didn't sit right with Michael. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something missing, something unexplained. He decided to visit the medical examiner's office, hoping to get more information. The medical examiner, a stern-faced woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, confirmed the cause of death, but also mentioned a few details that had been omitted from the police report. There were some minor bruises on Mr. Turner's arms and legs, she explained. Nothing significant, but they were unusual for someone who died in their sleep. Michael's suspicions deepened. Could those bruises be a sign of foul play? Could George's death have been more than just a natural occurrence? He thanked the medical examiner and left the office, his mind racing with questions. He returned home, his unease growing with each passing hour. He watched Buddy closely, observing his every move, trying to decipher the meaning behind his behavior. He noticed that Buddy seemed particularly agitated whenever someone approached George's study, his growls becoming louder, his body tensing as if ready to attack. One afternoon, as Michael was working in his makeshift home office, he heard a crash coming from George's study. He rushed to the room, his heart pounding, his mind filled with dread. He found Buddy standing over a fallen bookshelf, his body trembling, his eyes wide with fear. Michael cautiously approached the bookshelf, his gaze scanning the scattered books and papers. As he reached down to pick up a fallen photograph, his fingers brushed against something hard and cold. He pulled it out from under the bookshelf, his blood running cold as he recognized the object. It was a small, ornate box, the kind used to store jewelry or other valuables. Michael had seen it before in George's desk drawer. He remembered George telling him that it contained some of his most prized possessions. But why was it hidden under the bookshelf? And why was Buddy so agitated by its presence? With trembling hands, Michael opened the box. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a collection of old photographs and letters. Michael's eyes widened as he recognized the people in the photographs. They were George's parents, his grandparents, his siblings. But there was one photograph that stood out, a photograph that sent a chill down Michael's spine. It was a photograph of a young woman, her face hauntingly familiar. Michael had seen that face before in a newspaper article about a missing person case. The article had been published years ago, but the woman's disappearance had remained a mystery. And now, here she was, in a photograph hidden in George's secret box. Michael's mind reeled as he tried to make sense of the connection. Why would George have a photograph of a missing woman? Could he have been involved in her disappearance? The thought was too terrible to contemplate, yet the evidence was staring him in the face. He looked at Buddy, who was now whimpering softly, his eyes filled with fear. It was as if the dog had known all along, as if he had been trying to warn them of a danger that lurked beneath the surface of their seemingly peaceful lives. A wave of horror washed over Michael as he realized the truth. His father, the man he had loved and admired, had been hiding a dark secret, a secret that Buddy had sensed all along. And now, it was up to Michael to uncover the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. Michael, his mind reeling from the discovery of the photograph, felt a surge of adrenaline mixed with dread. He knew he couldn't ignore this, couldn't simply brush it aside as a strange coincidence. He had to find out the truth, for his father's sake, for his family's sake, and for Buddy's sake, the loyal companion who had sensed the darkness all along. He carefully gathered the contents of the box, placing the photographs and letters in a separate envelope. He then examined the box itself, running his fingers along its smooth surface, searching for any hidden compartments or clues. To his surprise, he discovered a small inscription on the bottom of the box, a series of numbers and letters etched into the wood. He recognized it as a code, a cipher of some sort. His heart pounded with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Could this be the key to unlocking the mystery? Could it lead him to answers about the missing woman and his father's possible involvement? He spent the next few days immersed in research, poring over books on cryptography, searching online databases, and consulting with experts. He learned that the inscription was a type of substitution cipher, A simple code where each letter is replaced by another letter or number. With painstaking effort, he managed to decipher the code, revealing a single word, lilac. The word held no immediate meaning for Michael, but it sparked a memory. He remembered his father mentioning a lilac inn, a small bed and breakfast that had existed years ago on the outskirts of town. The inn had burned down in a mysterious fire, its owner, a young woman, presumed dead. Could this be the missing woman from the photograph? Could the lilac inn be the key to unraveling the mystery? Driven by a newfound sense of purpose, Michael decided to investigate the lilac inn. He visited the local library, searching for old newspaper articles and records. He found several articles about the fire, describing the tragic incident and the unsolved mystery surrounding the owner's disappearance. The articles mentioned the owner's name, Eleanor Vance. Michael's blood ran cold as he looked at the photograph in his hand. The woman in the photograph, the woman from George's secret box, was undoubtedly Eleanor Vance. The connection was undeniable. But what was George's involvement in her disappearance? Was he responsible for her death? He decided to visit the site of the Lilac Inn, hoping to find some clues. The inn had been reduced to rubble years ago, the land now overgrown with weeds and wildflowers. As Michael walked through the ruins, a sense of sadness washed over him. This place had once been filled with life and laughter. Now it was a desolate reminder of a tragedy that had never been resolved. He noticed a small shed standing at the edge of the property, its wooden walls weathered and gray. He cautiously approached the shed, his heart pounding with anticipation. He peered through a crack in the door, his eyes widening as he saw what lay inside. It was a dusty old trunk, its metal clasps rusted and corroded. Michael, his curiosity piqued, managed to pry open the trunk. Inside, he found a collection of personal belongings, clothes, books, photographs. He sifted through the items, his heart sinking as he realized they belonged to Eleanor Vance. At the bottom of the trunk, he found a small diary, its pages yellowed and brittle. He carefully opened the diary, his eyes scanning the faded ink. The diary entries, written in Eleanor's elegant handwriting, chronicled her life at the Lilac Inn, her dreams, her fears, her hopes for the future. As Michael read through the entries, a chilling realization dawned on him. Eleanor had been writing about George, about his frequent visits to the inn, about his growing obsession with her. The entries described his unwanted advances, his threats, his possessiveness. Eleanor had been terrified of George, her diary entries filled with fear and desperation. The final entry, dated the day before the fire, sent shivers down Michael's spine. Eleanor wrote about confronting George, about rejecting his advances, about his anger and his threats of revenge. The entry ended abruptly, the last sentence unfinished, as if Eleanor had been interrupted mid-sentence. Michael closed the diary, his hands trembling, his mind reeling from the revelation. His father, the man he had always known as kind and gentle, had been a stalker, a predator, possibly even a murderer. The truth was more horrifying than he could have ever imagined. He returned home, the weight of his discovery pressing heavily on his shoulders. He looked at Buddy, who was now watching him with a knowing gaze, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. It was as if the dog had understood all along, as if he had been trying to warn them of the darkness that lurked within their own family. Michael knew he had to confront his mother and sister with the truth, no matter how painful it might be. He gathered them in the living room, his voice trembling as he recounted his findings. Martha, her face pale and drawn, listened in stunned silence, her world crumbling around her once again. Sarah, her eyes filled with tears, struggled to comprehend the dark side of the man she had always known as her loving father. The revelation of George's secret cast a long shadow over the Turner family. The grief they had felt for his loss was now intertwined with a sense of betrayal, of disillusionment, of horror. They struggled to reconcile the image of the man they had loved with the monster he had become. But amidst the pain and confusion, a sense of unity emerged. They were a family, bound by blood and love, and they would face this challenge together. They would seek justice for Eleanor Vance. They would honor her memory, and they would find a way to heal from the wounds inflicted by the man they had once called father. The revelation of George's dark secret hung over the Turner family like a storm cloud, casting a shadow over their lives and their memories. Martha, her heart shattered, struggled to reconcile the loving husband she had known with the man who had terrorized Eleanor Vance. Michael and Sarah grappled with the betrayal, their childhood memories tainted by the knowledge of their father's hidden life. But amidst the pain and confusion, a sense of determination emerged. They knew they couldn't let George's actions go unpunished. They owed it to Eleanor Vance, to her memory, to seek justice for the life that had been stolen from her. Michael, driven by a sense of responsibility, contacted the local police, sharing his findings and presenting the evidence he had gathered. The police, initially skeptical, were convinced by the compelling evidence, the photograph, the diary, the coded message. They reopened the investigation into Eleanor Vance's disappearance, treating it as a possible homicide. The news of the reopened investigation sent shockwaves through the community. George Turner, the respected deacon, the beloved neighbor, the kind animal lover, was now suspected of being a stalker and a murderer. The town was divided, some refusing to believe the accusations, others expressing shock and disgust. The Turner family, once held in high esteem, now faced ostracism and suspicion. Martha, her grief compounded by the shame and judgment, retreated into herself, her once warm and welcoming home now a place of isolation and sorrow. Michael and Sarah, their reputations tarnished by their father's actions, faced whispers and sideways glances wherever they went. But they refused to be defined by their father's sins. They held their heads high, their love for each other and their commitment to justice their guiding lights. They attended every court hearing, their presence a silent testament to their determination to see the truth prevail. The trial was a media spectacle, the courtroom packed with reporters and curious onlookers. The prosecution presented a compelling case, weaving together the evidence and Eleanor Vance's diary entries to paint a picture of a man driven by obsession and capable of violence. The defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that there was no concrete proof of George's involvement in Eleanor's death. The jury deliberated for days, the tension in the courtroom palpable. Finally, the verdict was announced: guilty. George Turner, despite his death, was held accountable for his actions. A sense of justice, albeit bittersweet, prevailed. In the aftermath of the trial, the Turner family slowly began to heal. Martha, with the support of her children and a few close friends, found solace in her faith and in the memories of the good times she had shared with George before his darkness consumed him. Michael and Sarah, their names cleared, rebuilt their lives, their bonds strengthened by the shared ordeal. Buddy, the faithful companion who had sensed the darkness all along, remained a constant source of comfort. He seemed to understand the family's pain, his presence a silent reassurance of their enduring love. He would often lie at Martha's feet, his head resting on her lap, his eyes filled with a deep empathy. One sunny afternoon, as Martha sat on the porch swing, Buddy by her side, a sense of peace settled over her. She looked at Buddy, his golden fur gleaming in the sunlight, his tail wagging gently. She remembered the day George had brought him home, a tiny, shivering puppy who had captured their hearts. She remembered the joy he had brought into their lives, the unconditional love he had given so freely. "Thank you, Buddy," she whispered, stroking his fur. "Thank you for showing us the truth. Thank you for being our guardian angel." Buddy licked her hand, his eyes filled with love and devotion. He had done more than just bark at a coffin. He had exposed a hidden darkness, brought justice to a forgotten victim, and helped his family find closure. He was a testament to the profound bond between humans and animals, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, love and loyalty can prevail. The story of Buddy's bark became a local legend, a tale whispered around campfires and shared among families. It was a story of grief and betrayal, of courage and resilience, of the enduring power of love and the unwavering loyalty of a dog who refused to let the truth be buried. And in the hearts of those who knew him, Buddy became a symbol of hope, a reminder that even in the face of darkness, there is always light to be found.